So today's video is going to be about Chinese concept of Tao and how it plays in relations to US and the way the country behaves. The reason, the inspiration for this video come from my recent trip back to US to visit my parents. I spent a better part of 12 and a half days there, revisiting some of the places I grew up, some of the people I used to know, and just check out the country in general, right? And my impressions is that it's just a wild place. It is a wild place. But my feeling for the country has changed a lot because I left as a young man, when I just turned 30, and I returned 12 years later to find that country, for the most part, hasn't really changed that much. But I have, because my experience, global experience, because of my travel, because of my working experience, when I go back to the US, I feel like I'm a stranger with a fresh set of eyes, looking at the society in the ways I never did when I was growing up there. So what are my impressions on this trip? Well, I saw a lot of good people in the US. I saw a lot of decent, good people who are striving, who are working very hard and trying to find their ways. Financially, US isn't that bad. I didn't feel US was struggling financially, even though a lot of people gripe about how it is difficult to make a living. To be frank with you, I've traveled in many other countries whose citizens have a much harder time making a living than the US. So financially, US is not in bad shape, unlike a lot of the doomsday YouTubers trying to portray US to be. However, what I did see was a spiritual struggle, emotional struggle, for people to find ways, to find identity, to find a sense of belonging, to find purpose, to find reason for existence. And maybe that's why, people in the US, this whole lifestyle branding thing invented in the US, because even people trying to find who they are in the brands they purchase, the things they buy, and so the companies and the product they support, that's their way of showing who they are. So, and I see this striving because fundamentally US is a country who really believes that you need to manage, you need to control, you need to manipulate things to get where you want to be in life, right? Hence the word "fake it till you make it." And a lot of these silly phrases come from the US. Motivational speak, so forth. I'm sure you should serve YouTube, you'll find tons of these things. And they mostly originated in the US, eventually with copycats in other parts of the world. And you see even this in the way American manages global politics, right? In the last 30, 40 years, they have trying to maintain world order based on their own concept, and they have got themselves entangled in, it seems like never-ending wars in all parts of the world, from Latin America to Middle East to Asia to now even Europe. And this morning, I because I'm still jet lagged, I was watching YouTube, and this video on Taoism come up. Being Chinese, I have some understanding of Taoism, but so I was listening to this Taoism. I understand Taoism is about following the natural order of things, and not imposing your own will into how things should work, how things could work, right? So it's almost a counter opposite of the US way. Because US way is all about individualism, about my way, about how I want the world to be, which is very much an ego-driven method of arranging life, right? So me, how I want the world to be, and my striving and my effort to make the world the way I want it to be. Whereas Taoism in China is just a polar opposite, which is it's devoid of ego. It's simply let things happen the way naturally intended. It's not that you don't do anything. It's not that. but simply of letting nature does its work. One example would be, for example, farmer, right? A farmer are not in the Tao tradition. A farmer is not supposed to do all these genetic modification, all these things that U.S. tend to do in order to create greater yield. What farmer's role in the greatest cosmos thing is plant the seed and take care of the plant and harvest the crop. All the other things, nature will take care of itself. So I've thought about the way U.S. is going as a country and the way these people are. Because I cannot say the Americans are happy people. In fact, America still live in the most, to me, on this trip, even on this trip, they live in the most abundant, materially abundant country in the world. Yet I don't see them being happy, or any happier at least, than even the poorest parts of the world. And all that striving, all that egoism, all that based on individual concept of individualism, individuals, me, what I want, what I need, it alienate everyone from each other, right? It alienates children from their parents, friends from each other, bosses from their employees from their company. Everyone becomes singular unit in the beginning and the end of itself. And they have nothing greater to live towards. And maybe that's why religions play such an important role in the U.S. today. Well, the U.S. is the most scientific driven society in the world, yet it's also the most religious country in the world, right? Even though U.S. constantly talk about religious fundamentalism around the world, in fact, what I find that the U.S. is also a religious fundamental society. And I think that they need that religion because they're so lost in that individualism. They only live for themselves, not even for their spouse, not even for their children. That there's nothing to believe in, right? And because there's nothing to believe in, there's nothing to hold on to. They need to manipulate, they need to control, they need to do all these things to feel like they can keep their world in order. The individual is the beginning and the end. And that's the reason why I think that the Americans never feel secure, even though they are the most powerful country in the world. They are the richest. They can impose their will on almost every other country in the world, with the exception of right now Russia and China. Yet they feel constantly threatened by other countries. They feel unsafe when they look toward foreigners. When they even look toward each other, like to other Americans, they feel unsafe toward each other because they're alone. Right? And all this striving is counterintuitive. I mean, if you grew up in the U.S. and you really believe that like effort equals reward, effort equals result, right? You got to work hard to be successful. But as I get older, I do see that the reality isn't that way. Because if you look at the people who work the hardest, usually they're the people who make the least amount of money. They're at the bottom of society. They work long hours. They work hard, manual labors, but they don't get anywhere. The top layer of society, they actually don't work very hard. They have a lot of time for leisure, for social activity. Yet money is just flowing. Influence, money, power. And that is the way, right? That's part of the Taoism. That is the flow of the nature. You have to understand it. Of course, it's not just saying that there shouldn't be individual striving. There shouldn't be individual effort. But it has to work. The cosmos works in a certain way. Cosmos works in a certain way. And your effort has to work in alignment with the cosmos. You can't constantly fight against nature, but you have to take the time understanding how natural world works. And then your effort should flow with the natural order of things instead of against it. And I think fundamentally why US is losing right now and China is winning is because in a way, I feel that U.S. is fighting against everything. Fighting is flowing counter to the Tao, the path, the way, the method, and that it's very hard to translate even the word Tao because it has so much meaning in China, depending on the context. But essentially, the way, the cosmo way, the natural way of things, and China is not like that. It's different in that. Another way to understand it is like when the way American approach something is all about planning, executing, strategizing. Da, da, da. Where what I saw in China is that people are much calmer. They react to things. They don't project their ego, identity, and plans and think this is how the world needs to work. It needs to work according to my method, right? What they do is that they see how the world work, and they react to it. Thus, they're more in the way. They're more in the Tao, in the flow of things. Instead of in projecting egos like the world must, their ego, sorry, to say that the world must work the way I want it to work. I'm not saying the Chinese are not frustrated. They're not just pressured or they're not stressed. They are. But there's fundamentally on a higher level, there's a different approach to how people go about their lives. And at least at this point in time in human history development, it seemed to me going with the Tao, going with the flow of things, and being reactive and being as flexible. Because all the world is so chaotic, because all the world is too big for anyone to know it all, to plan it out, to see it all, is a much more effective way of conducting one's lives than trying to control, manipulate, plan, have everything exactly the way a person wants it to be. And as a result, I think that if you incorporate some of the Chinese Taoism into your life, you'll be happier as a person. And that's fundamentally what America, I feel, is missing for its population. And that is why they get it, because and that fundamental unhappiness, unsatisfaction is being manifested in the way they conduct everything, business, the way they conduct geopolitics, the way they conduct foreign affairs, domestic affairs, and just one battle over another, one fight after another, fighting against oneself, fighting against other parties, political party, fighting against other countries, a non-stop fight for control, for dominance. So that is my video about Taoism and USA.